Welcome back to another episode of the Sales Gravy Podcast. I'm Jeb Blount, and on this episode, we're going to be diving into something we really never dived in before, and that is what it's like to work on and to lead on a sales force that is multi-generational. Before we get started, I want you to go check out Sales Gravy University. Sales Gravy University is where thousands of companies and sales professionals all across the globe come to learn the game of sales. And Sales Gravy University is just really different than any other platform out there because you can take live courses taught by our master trainers and thousands of hours of on-demand courses taught by some of the greatest minds in sales. And we've just launched our new team hub. So if you've got a team of salespeople, all your content, all your reporting can be in one location. And right now, you can take your very first course for free if you use the code FREECOURSE. Just go to learn.salesgravy.com. That's learn.salesgravy.com. Now, with me is Leigh Cantrell and Rob Matura, and they're with Cigna. Yep. And both of you are regional vice presidents. You lead highly diverse sales teams that have people of all ages on those sales teams. And it's just fascinating what you do, and it's got to be a huge challenge. Before we get started, you each run a couple of different regions, and I just want to give you just a quick opportunity to introduce yourself to the audience. And we'll start with you, Leigh.
Yeah, so I'm Leigh Cantrell, as you mentioned, and I have the responsibility for the Southeast region. So think about Miami all the way to Arkansas. Now, if that's not diverse for you, I'm not sure what is. But in all seriousness, I live in Atlanta. I'm a Southern girl myself, born and raised here. So it's a great experience. I love the Southeast, love being able to travel all over the place and get to bring that excitement to our teams and our brokers and get the pleasure of working with Rob.
Thank you, Leigh. I have the pleasure of working with you. My name, as you mentioned, is Rob Matura, and I'm the regional vice president. I have a pretty diverse region as well. I go from the Northeast to the Midwest to the West. So think of New York to Arizona. Little different. You go from high rises to cactus, and I actually live in Arizona myself. The teams that I lead are great mixture of individuals from tenured 15, 20-year Cigna veterans. I'm a 17-year Cigna veteran myself, all the way to the brand new right out of college or grad school and learning the business of sales. And so it's a lot of fun that we work together, run the country together, and help lead a diverse group of people.
Now, Leigh and I have something in common. We like fried okra and we like grits, right? And so we're going to be working on you because there's nothing like cheesy grits.
Oh, that's
it's the
right.
best in the world. We also talked just on the pre-show a little bit about recruiting folks from the military to come in because you like their discipline and that's again people who come from all different backgrounds. The experiences they've had may be very, very different than the experiences that your new grad has had. So a highly diverse sales team. And when we say diversity, we're talking about diversity of age, and I primarily want to talk about multi-generational, but knowing a lot of the people on your team, you've got people from different backgrounds, educational backgrounds. You got people who came from sales. You got people who've never seen sales before in their life and decided that's what they want to do, and you recruited them because they were talented. You've got males and females and people from different races. I mean, it's really like this big old basket of all these different human beings, and you guys are trying to manage them across this wide swath. And like you said, Miami to Arkansas is like going to two different countries almost.
Right.
So you have to be a different kind of leader in that space. So Leigh, let's start with you. When you think about leading a diverse sales team, multi-generational, different backgrounds, different careers, what are the challenges for a leader when you're leading a team that has that much diversity?
Well, to me as a leader, right, you have to figure out what your team brings. And each person on that team is going to bring their own magic, right? And what my job as a leader is to help them figure out that magic and really expand upon it. And so the 65-year-old may be different than the 25-year-old that we have on the team, right? But it's all about, we talked so much about it today, people buy from you. And so if they can identify with you, and that's what you really want. So the 65-year-old is sitting there and they have something in common with the people that we sell to every day, right? Because they're in the same situation a lot of times. And they can say, it's been so interesting. We just got done with a bunch of broker roundtables, and so many of our agents are Medicare eligible. They're Medicare age, and they love to pull their Cigna card out and they say, if it's good enough for me, it's good enough for you. And what an awesome thing that is. Well, when I started in the business, I was 26 years old and I was not Medicare eligible, right? But my dad was. And so I leveraged that experience. I was kind of their granddaughter, right? My dad's in Medicare. Hey, this was really complicated for him. This is how I've helped him. But really pulling the magic, what's the story that they can tell to be successful? And it's not going to be the same story for everybody, right? And you can't always steal somebody else's story and make it make sense for you, but really finding the magic that each person can bring.
So it sounds like the beginning of this is if you're going to have a diversity on your sales team, you have to begin as a leader of seeing every single person on that team as an individual. Absolutely. So there's not a one size fits all from a coaching standpoint, from a training and mentoring. You've got to work with each individual and build their own strengths. Would that be true?
100%.
So Rob, let's go back to building these teams to begin with. So one, we have to coach and lead as individuals, and that, by the way, is very difficult for a lot of leaders. It's much better to have a homogenous group of people, and then everybody gets the same treatment, because that really stretches you as a professional. But at Cigna, which I think is just an amazing career. It's an amazing company, and I know y'all very, very well. But I just think you've done such a beautiful job of building the sales team that, to me, is the sales team of the future. Like, the future is not a team full of young 25-year-olds, which has typically been what sales has been, but a team full of people who bring all these different experiences to the table. Let's go back to recruiting and bringing those type of people in. What type of intention do you have to have as a leader and as an organization to make the decision that you're going to lean into that level of diversity?
Absolutely. It's a great question. And Leigh, I loved your answer. I was making some mental notes there to take back for my teams. But when you talk about recruiting and intention, it really, as a leader, you have to understand where your strengths are of the team, what weaknesses you may have, how you need to fill them. And you said before, everyone's an individual. And actually, in one of your books, you talk about the 5 different ways to prospect, right? The asynchronous and synchronous. And your quote is always, you have to be great at all of them. Think about that leading a diverse or multi-diverse team. You have to be great at understanding each individual and being great at being able to relate to each individual. So we may have an individual of whatever age or race or location who's got a strength that is beyond belief, but everyone also has weaknesses. And so finding someone to help balance the strength with the weakness together, so you have an overall team, not looking at someone necessarily as a type of person to bring into the team, but you're looking for the skill sets that's going to make your team collectively stronger and, of course, reach your target population.
Now, that's powerful. And that's what I've always believed about diversity on teams, is that the differences as a group make the group stronger. Yep. Because there is conflict, and there are, it forces us to try to figure out where those strengths are, and it forces us to figure out the things that we like about each individual, which I think is super important. One of my great mentors once said that as a leader, it's not about people liking you. It's about your ability to find the things in the people that you lead that you like.
Yep.
And
absolutely.
And then that diversity, what I love about it is that because you have all these different people and different talents, they have a tendency to gel, to me, better, because sometimes it's just the quirkiness of the team, but they begin to see themselves as something that's unique, because they are. And that creates this strength and identity that you typically wouldn't have if the entire team, acts alike, looks alike, dresses alike, everybody is just alike. So I think that's powerful. But let's go back. Let's think about the interview process, Leigh, because I think, like, when we start thinking about building a sales team that has this diversity, and age is a big deal, because if you just think about most leaders, you get a 65-year-old who comes in for the interview And a lot of sales leaders are in their they're late to mid 30s, and they're sitting across the table. Their brain turns off. They're like, "This, you're too old to work here," right? And I know that's true. And I see people looking at me now. I'm 56 years old, and people look at me and they go, "You're too old to walk in the room." In fact, I have somebody recently. We would like someone a little bit fresher. So I'm like, okay, I get that. But what discipline does it take for the leader? The person walks into the interview so that you are open versus closed to that these different people have different things or individuals.
Well, I think number one, you have to recognize your own bias, right? We all have our own bias, whether we want to admit it or not. And you have to be open-minded, and you cannot think, oh, I know exactly this person's situation. I know why they're here. You've got to find that out. And I know one of the things that you like to talk about too is kind of like getting to the root of it. What's your why? What do you want to accomplish here? Whether you are, just starting in your career or you're finishing your career, I want to know, why do you want this role? Is it because you have such a passion for seniors and you want to help them? Or is it because you're just trying to pay your mortgage? Both of them are good whys, don't get me wrong, right? But you're going to have different strengths. You may, have a family, and that may be like such an important why to you, but I also need you to really have that compassion for the members we serve. And so I think just getting out of our own way and putting our bias to the side and really asking the questions that are going to pull that person out to, why do you want this role and how are you going to be successful?
Yeah, so one of the most insidious biases that we have as human beings, and by the way, this you can leverage this in sales as well, but is something called the similarity bias. And we can talk about it all day long and say put it aside, but this bias is always in play because it's baked into our DNA. And the similarity bias says that people who are like me are more trustworthy. So if you're a 30-something manager and you've got people who are closer to your age walking through the door, you're going to initially think those individuals are more trustworthy than people who are 30 years your senior. And there's a lot of other things that come into play, as well as your fear of trying to manage. Maybe you feel insecure, but that similarity bias is always there, always. And when you talk about putting it aside, what you're essentially saying is that what you have to do is rise above it. Like, you have to choose your intention. And choosing your intention is, to me, it is when a person walks in, the slate is clean.
Right.
What I'm looking for are the reasons why this person is either going to fill a gap on my team, or they're going to have a passion for what we do, or they're going to be an amazing member because they're going to love to work here, and this is going to be a great opportunity for them. That's really the key here, and that's not easy. It's really difficult for you to get past those biases, even though we talk about them all the time. So, and I think especially true when it comes to age on sales teams. There was a point in time where sales teams were primarily men. Like, you can probably remember early in your career, Leigh, where you walk into a sales room and it's like just bro culture everywhere. And it's still like that in some software companies, right? And I came in an industry that was almost all male, but by the time I left there, it was about 50-50. I've got a couple of my clients who've made major strides in getting more women on the sales force. There's a lot of push for that. So we've kind of gotten past that. And there was a time when you walked into a sales force and everybody's wearing a suit and every one of them's man and they're all white and they all look the same, right? And now you walk into sales teams and we turn the cameras on sometimes in the studio, and it's just a mixture of everybody. And it's a huge move forward in terms of hiring, especially in sales. But age, that seems to be a barrier that very few companies have passed. If I really look at sales teams, most sales teams they're in a slice of 21 to 35. And then there's a handful of people who are hanging around that are older, but that doesn't look like your team.
But Jeb, let me share a piece of advice I give with my teams. I'm a huge baseball fan. And so I always relate most things back to sports and most things back to baseball. The most successful baseball teams have a mixture of grizzly vets who have been there, done that, who are mentoring and teaching the younger generation of players. They have the young up-and-coming studs who can hit home runs all day and know how to play that game and have the speed in their mind to do so. And then they've got the mixture of individuals who are 5, 6, 7 years in, everyday players. There's nothing they haven't seen, and they're mechanical in their approach. If you think about it, those sorts of teams, those sorts of individuals all help each other. And a team doesn't succeed if they don't buy into helping each other. And so they remove the age bias, they remove the gender bias, they remove any bias that they have. You have to come in purposefully every day to do that. And the leader, the manager of that team, has to instill that as your culture. You do that, you're going to win more games than you lose. And collectively, you're going to achieve more than you can individually, whether you're the young stud ignoring the grizzly vet or vice versa. You buy in, you're going to achieve more together.
For me, the way that I just look at the world, now this is, I'm just sales through and through. All I think about is sales. I live sales. It's the only thing that I'm good at. Is I just see every human being as a dollar sign. And I know this is weird, okay? Because I'm not saying that they don't matter. I look at every person, and it's either can you produce dollars or can't produce dollars. I don't care where you came from. Yep. I don't care if you got a college degree, don't have a college degree. I don't care if you're 90 or you're 20. Yep. I just look at you, and it's kind of like what you were saying. I just look and say, are you the person that's going to be able to generate an outcome on this team? And then be happy that you're on the team. Like I want people who are happy in their work. Like I always ask people in interviews, like walk me through what it is that you want. Like take me through what would be meaningful work for you, because I want them to make money and I want them to want to stay. So when I do that, that's the way I get rid of the whole similarity bias, everything. I just say everybody's green, and how much green can you produce? Because sales is one of those jobs where we still have to produce. So, but I want to step into Leigh, the 30-something. I know sales managers are 28 years old. I became a sales manager when I was 27, I think. You're a young sales manager, sales leader, and you're conducting interviews, and you're looking at resumes. Maybe your HR person is bringing you some interviews in, and in walks, I don't know, Joe, right? And he's been in every sales job you can imagine, and walks in the door, and suddenly, as soon as you see Joe, because when you're 27 years old, Joe's like 48, but he looks like he's 80 to you, because that's how it looks. Like it's like when you hit 50, people who look 25 look like they're babies, right? So you see this, and you could have the reaction, this won't work, Joe's too old, those type of things, but when I put myself back in those shoes at that age, what I would have seen was intimidation. Like I've got to lead a person who is that much older than me. We grew up in the South, right? So I grew up in a place where I said yes ma'am and no ma'am to anybody who was, if you were 5 years older than me, I was yes ma'am and no ma'am. I learned that level of respect, and that level of that intimidation factor can cause you to immediately eliminate that person, even subconsciously, where you just feel like, how can I manage a person who is that much older and has that much more experience than me? What do you say to that person, and how do they, because I think that's real for people. Yeah. How do they get past that?
Well, it's interesting. So my first real leadership role was exactly that. So I was in my early 30s. I became a sales director, and I was actually somebody on my team used to be my manager, right? Yep. And he was aging into kind of the twilight of his career. But one of the things that I think is so important for a young leader is to have that experience on the team, because guess what? None of us know everything, right? Mm-hmm. And so I think that's what I learned at a really early age as a leader, is to leverage that experience. Listen, that person had been around sales and Medicare 20 plus years longer than I had. They had seen it all, right? And so I wanted to access that experience. And so I didn't look like, oh man, they're ancient. They have so much experience I can gain, and our team can gain. And I think that's another thing as leaders. And I do think there's some generational differences as younger people become leaders. We want to see different things in our leaders. We don't want the authoritarian, right? We want a partner. We want to work together. We want to be collaborative. And I hope that we can bring that to the next generation too, because hey, we need to collaborate together because we're going to be better together versus let me set the agenda. That's not going to work.
Yeah, I think I look back at my career and I think two things. When I was really young, I had a team, everybody on my team was older than me. And I was just a very ambitious leader. I got promoted very, very quickly. I went from, literally frontline entry-level job when I was 24 years old to when I was 33 years old, I'm vice president of sales, like a very, very quick move. So there were points in my life where everybody was older, more experienced. And the thing that really helped me was just some mentors who helped me just get over like the need to be the smartest person in the room. And essentially what they said was, you want to make yourself obsolete. That's how you get promoted. And I'll never forget one of my early leaders, Roger McKee, said that to me. He said, if you want to get ahead, make yourself obsolete. And I said, well, if I'm obsolete, they won't need me anymore. And he goes, no. He said, if you're obsolete, they will always find more important things for you to do. And what I learned, what obsolete was, is you bring people and you get people around you who are better than you at doing it. And it turns out that people who have more experience, they're typically really good at doing it, and they don't need a lot of hand holding. And if they're showing up every day, they're more motivated. You don't have to kick them out of bed. They're ready to go. And so what I did was started tapping into that experience, and I would sit down with them and say, you've had a lot of experience in this, teach me. Or I would say, I've got a group of people and I need to train them. You already know how to do this. Would you mind training them? And they would just light up because suddenly now they feel important. They feel significant. They feel like that their expertise, the things that they've gained over time, they feel like that's appreciated, and like everybody wants to know that they matter, and suddenly they're more motivated and they're jumping in there with you. And then I'm sitting in my office one day staring at the wall. I got nothing to do because all the people around me are so good at it, and then I get the next promotion. So for me, it was always about, and I had to learn this. Somebody to teach me this. Let go of your ego, right, and tap into their experience, and it makes you better. But Rob, how about this concept of multi-generational mentorship? You read about this sometimes where, you got the Gen Z helping, I'm like, I'm Gen X, but we talk about, the baby boomers, which, that's fading quickly, but you've got one generation helping the other generation. We talk about that. I read about this in the Wall Street Journal and all these things. But how do you, as a leader, foster that environment where you've got that intergenerational mentorship happening, and almost organically, where everybody's working with each other?
I go to learning, and that's what we really focus our teams on, is learning. I think of two things. One is the quote, "Those who don't learn the past are doomed to repeat it," and also, those who don't evolve become dinosaurs, right? And so if you think about a multi-generational team, all of those aspects are at play. And as a leader, fostering that culture of learning, so the younger sales professionals who haven't been around the block long enough yet, learning and understanding the different situations. And when this situation comes up, here's how I dealt with it as the older individual or the more experienced individual. You can accelerate a young individual's learning and their career incredibly high. But you have to be able to foster and buy into that learning environment, get your bias and your ego out of the way. Same token, a more experienced, older generational worker may feel like, hey, I've done this well for 20 years. But technology didn't stick around for 20 years in the same way. And that younger sales professional may be an expert in different ways to use technology to make them more successful. So if that older individual wants to continue to grow their career, hit their financial or life goals that they have, fostering that same culture of learning and getting taught how to use technology a little bit differently, or what are some new secrets or tricks of the trade that are helping them all be more successful. And if they really all buy into that learning culture, they see that the younger sales professional and the older sales professional are just as valuable and equal in their own experiences to help each other grow.
I love that. And that fostering culture, at least in my experience with the teams that I've run, and I've always prided myself on building these massively diverse teams where everybody's just different, and there's just crazy different from each other. I just love quirky teams. but what I had to do as a leader is I had to put people together in the same place a lot, because otherwise what people will do is eventually, because of the similarity bias, they'll all drift into their space where everybody around them is the same. So it was put them in the same place, put them in the same place, put them in the same place. I once, I took a group back when I was in LA, I took a group of my team members to see one of our locations in Boston, and I put them all on an airplane. And these were all, most of them were like native Southern Californians, like they'd never really seen snow. It was snowing, but then, the young people were out there throwing snowballs at the old people. And that was a moment where like everything clicked, and it wasn't something that we planned, it was organic. But we got them in situations enough with each other that it just became normal, and they began seeing themselves as similar to each other versus different, but in that particular group. Right, and at that point, like they got each other's back. Like you mess with one person in this group, you're messing with us all. So I think that's something that leaders have to make the decision to do, and you can't force it. You've got to make it happen. This has been a great conversation, but I want to back up to talk really quickly about Cigna. And this podcast wasn't necessarily meant to be an advertisement for Cigna, but I know that you're always looking for great people. Like you're constantly recruiting, you're constantly looking, and I want to talk a little bit about why people should come work for Cigna if you're in sales, and we got a pretty big sales audience. But let's talk about just stepping real quickly into recruiting in today's environment. So most leaders know that it's been harder because there are less great candidates out there, less talent, and you can't really afford to make a lot of mistakes because you're especially in sales, because you put the wrong person out in the street and it can destroy your brand and it can mess up a year. So what are some of the strategies that you're using right now to get people to come even talk to you about a job there, that other sales leaders, some best practices other sales leaders should maybe take up? And Leigh, why don't you start us off?
Oh boy, that's a big question, because that is a challenge, right, in today's world. And our business is interesting. So we have an internal sales team, but then we also have our broker channel. And that's what for sure we're always recruiting. We're always looking for new partners. And talk about an amazing business. Our business, we get to help people. Most of our products don't cost anything. I mean, if you can believe that, like my dad's like, what are you doing? How do you sell this? And in fact, when I got into the business, my dad, who had been in commercial real estate his whole life, he got his insurance license because he saw what a difference, and this was so needed, right? And he was over 65, and it was such a dynamic shift in our relationship too, because I got to teach him this new business. So that was really cool. But I mean, as far as recruiting, we are always looking for people with passion for other people, right? And really want to help out. And it's interesting, earlier in my sales career, you're always kind of looking for the sexy job, and back in the day, it was like pharmaceutical or whatever. I was a professional golfer for a little while. I was like, oh, I'm going to be an agent. I'm going to do this or that. And the thing that I've realized through my sales career, that stuff doesn't matter. What matters is helping people. And if you have a passion for that, you will always be taken care of. You'll always be successful. And so we look also for folks that have a military background, like we were talking about. They can be super successful with us. We actually have products that are really geared to helping veterans. And Cigna, I've only been at Cigna for 3 years, but I will say the culture at Cigna is so completely different than places that I've worked in the past. You really feel like you're a valued employee, that you are there. And that's, hopefully we make our teams feel the same way. But it truly is a different culture than so many people in our industry experience. But it all starts with, we're trying to help people.
I love that you said that, because if I think about as a leader, what I've always taught my sales leaders is you're always recruiting. It's just like prospecting, always on. And the most important thing, and that's so powerful, you said, is just keep your eye out for people around you who really have a passion for helping people, who are going the extra mile. And when you see them, you have to be aware enough to start a conversation with them, even if that conversation isn't for right now. Like, I would grab their information and say, could I call you sometime and just keep up with you, because if something changed, I'd love to talk to you about what we have to offer here. And it could be anybody. Some of the very best salespeople that I've ever hired were waiting tables.
Yeah.
We do that all the time.
We have a few of those. We do. And some from finance, some from underwriting. It's all walks of life. And really, it's when you're always looking for the qualities in a person who you want on the team, who the team needs, you're always have the opportunity to find somebody, to always be prospecting and recruiting for new talent. You never know when you're going to have an opening on your team. You never know when life happens. But if life does happen and you have to fill a spot and you don't have those personal connections, in today's day and age, 60 days, 90 days or longer, but you still have your sales goal, but now you have an empty spot. So always looking for
I love that, because that's when, I remember back when I was a sales manager, I'd lose somebody, but I had a whole list of people that I'd met and talked to, and I always call it my drawer of resumes, but it was like a drawer, but a business card. These days it's, it's digital, but I just start picking up the phone and I might call through 20 people and go, we talked a while back, I've got a new opportunity. And you'd get the one that said, I just had a bad experience with my boss. I'm interested. Nice. And now you're having a conversation and you're able to self-generate, because if you got to wait for recruiting to open rec. It makes all the difference in the world to always be recruiting, always be talking with people, and grab their name, put it down, stay in touch with them, and you will never have an open head count again.
That's the goal.
So you did a really nice job of telling people why they should come to Cigna. Rob, I know you have an immense passion about this, but so if you were talking to a person out there who may be like looking for a career change and thinking maybe this is what I want to do, or maybe you're moving to the end of your career in a company that doesn't value you because of your age, right, this is a good place to go. What would you say to a person who may be thinking about making a career change, maybe coming to Cigna?
So I'll look into the camera. Come to Cigna. I'm a 17-year veteran of Cigna. I've been approached by multiple companies over the years, like all of us are who are successful, and I've never left. In fact, I'm a second-generation Cigna employee. So to say I bleed the company, a little bit of an understatement. Why? It's the company that they really invest in their people. And Leigh said it great before. We're all around helping our customers live healthy lives, whether it's health, wellness, well-being, etc. And to do that every day with passion, you have to be a little different inside. You have to be that person who wants to help other people. Well, Cigna takes that same passion, puts it towards their employees. In my 17 years, I've gone on multiple rotations within the organization to learn. I love learning. They've had me lead operations, lead sales, build new channels, build distributions, build segments around the world and within the U.S., all because I just asked the question, hey, I want to learn this. Can I do something here? So Cigna invests in their employees just as much as we invest in our customers. And it's incredible culture. I can't describe it other than come work for Cigna, because you have to feel it, you have to experience it. But having that power and knowledge that you can do anything and you're going to be supported and you're going to have that opportunity, you just need to be curious, have a little bit of intelligence on what you want to look at doing, and go and do it and grab it. They're going to support you and do it.
And I would just add one thing. We're such in growth mode right now. So it's interesting. We've found some really good talent out in the field, and we're like, you're a great salesperson, but you know what we could really use you doing, right, is leading other salespeople or leading a training team. And so there's so much opportunity because we are in such a highly growth mode. I don't know how else to put it. Like we have really lofty goals, and so there's nothing like going to work for an organization too that will create a role around what the value you bring, right, and really make sure that that magic is explored. So
love that. So if someone wanted to come work for you in the Southeast, how would they get in touch with you?
Well, I'm on LinkedIn. Very, very active on LinkedIn. So Leigh Cantrell, maybe Leigh Turner Cantrell on LinkedIn, but shoot me a message. We'll get you plugged in depending on what you're looking for. And again, we always are recruiting on our broker channel. So if you're entrepreneurial, let's talk. Let's see how we can get you plugged into our systems. But yeah, just give us a direct message.
And same with me. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on all the socials. So regardless of what kind of social medium you use, you can find me as well, but it's robert.matura@cigna.com. That's also the email address, but that's my name on all the socials as well.
Wonderful. Awesome. Well, very nice to have you. This was a great conversation.
Appreciate it.
And folks, make sure that you go check out Sales Gravy University. That's learn.salesgravy.com, learn.salesgravy.com. And our brand new team hub, if you're a smaller scaling sales team, is really built for you. It gives you access to the same training that organizations at the enterprise level use, same quality training at a fraction of the cost, so you can scale up your sales team, get them ready to rock and roll, and you can drive productivity and performance. Go to Sales Gravy University. That's learn.salesgravy.com. We'll see you next time on the Sales Gravy Podcast.